Greetings everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm your host Captain Rye, and today's video comes to us courtesy of Tit for Tat. And Tat is playing in the Tier 5 British battleship Iron Duke here in World of Warships. As the battle gets underway, it's Shards, it's Domination match mode, and Tat is headed up towards the A cap point. Now what makes this battle particularly interesting is that Tat here is bottom tier in a tier 7 maximum battle. But not only is he bottom tier, he's bottom tier in a battleship, and not a particularly fast one, which means he's going to have to play this match very carefully, specifically positioning his ship in spots so that he can actually get his guns onto a target and be effective in supporting his team. Now his team has already started capturing the C cap point. This is a pretty standard move for teams that spawn on his side of the map because the C cap point is closest. It's one of those things I always tell people not to go to the C cap point if they're on the opposite side, simply because it's not close enough. But as you can see, the enemy team already starting to capture A. They're already in a position because, again, they've spawned close to it. Now, Tat's got a target off in the distance there. He gets shots out. That target is just barely inside of his gun range there, but you can see how much that gun range is reduced in scale when you are a tier 5 and a tier 7 match. Those tier 7 ships really make the map a much larger place to play in, which means you have to deal with having a shorter gun range if you're in a low tier ship. Now, this isn't particularly a problem if you have something like the Congo, which has a spotter aircraft, but here in the Iron Duke, you don't have that luxury. Enemy team manages to capture the A cap point. Tat's team manages to capture the B cap point, but you'll notice that up at C, they've been stopped. And more importantly, they've lost 2 of their ships in the process. Surprisingly, the enemy team decided that they were going to go to C in force. This is a little bit of an unusual move, and generally speaking, doesn't necessarily pay off. However, in this case, it seems to have done a bit of wonder for their team there, as they've managed to take the destroyer advantage very early in the game. Tat's team didn't have the destroyer advantage to begin with, only having 2 destroyers to the enemy's 3, but losing that 1 destroyer, well, that could definitely be a serious problem. Not only that, friendly cruiser up there, also very low health, and at risk of getting deleted by all of the other enemy ships. Now you'll notice that Tat here is firing exclusively high explosive. This is something that he pointed out to me when he sent me the replay, that he just kept his head down, kept firing high explosive. And while high explosive is particularly good in the British battleships, that's definitely their flavor, if you will, it's important to remember that you do have that armor piercing, and if you've got a broadside on cruiser, even if it's 2 tiers higher than you, your armor piercing is going to royally wreck them, probably more so than your high explosive. Now the reason for firing high explosive at a broadside cruiser, especially down at tier 5, is given the caliber of the guns that you have, that high explosive shell is probably going to penetrate, and more than likely is going to Citadel, especially something with particularly weak armor, like, for instance, a French baguette. Definitely going to be able to penetrate here. Now, I do admit here that the first part of this battle is particularly slow and kind of boring, but it is what it is as far as a battleship replay, especially when you're bottom tier in a slower battleship. The enemy team has managed to kill that cruiser that was up here with Tat, who was fairly low health, and they're in the process of capping C. One of the problems that I have with this map is given the number of islands and the positioning that they're in. You'll notice that a lot of Tat's team was down at the C cap point, has now basically just hidden along the flank well behind those islands. So they're not really being effective in getting their guns out there. Now those islands can certainly play a valuable role in cover and concealment when trying to get into position, or if you're in a battleship and you're trying to survive. But if you're there with backup, you need to get out there and you need to push forward and cause some problems. The enemy team manages to kill yet another ship, but look at that, Tat's team has pulled it back just a little bit. They've managed to kill 2 more ships, and there's a very low health cruiser out here that Tat's going to go ahead and try to finish off. He's got the high explosive, it's a good option there given the angle that cruiser was at. Manages to hit him, sets him on fire. Is that going to be enough to burn him down, or is he going to put that fire out? I'd also like to point out this is basically the first damage that Tat's managed to do in the game at this point, after 5 minutes of playtime. Manages to secure his first kill there, and now the teams are technically equal on ships, but not equal on points. And they've managed to kill yet another one, so now Tat's team is actually up, and then they're not. You can see how quickly this battle is now going back and forth. But one thing to pay attention to here is that while the teams are equal for ships, and especially equal on the destroyer front now, the enemy team holds 2 of the caps. And this is something that I always have to remind people of, especially people in cruisers and destroyers. You have to get up there and you have to get those caps, especially early on, because you can see here, even though the teams are equal, the enemy team is up on points. Actually, Tat's team has managed to kill yet another one, so the teams aren't even equal anymore. But again, the enemy team is still up on points because they hold those caps. So they're able to weather losing ships much, much more effectively. Now, Tat has got this ship on fire, and you can see this ship is turning and maneuvering hard. He definitely wants to stay alive. He's managed to put the fire out here. Tat's got more shots out, does connect with him, leaves him on very, very minimal health there, doesn't have a heal. So in this case, you see Tat here, he's bow on, he's just starting to turn. You gotta plan that turn just a little bit better and get those rear guns on target sooner. Especially if you're dealing with something like a battleship or a cruiser that has a heal, because you want to be able to get these shots out a full broadside to maximize your chances of hitting this guy. And you can see here, RNGesus, being ever the troll, is basically allowing these shells to straddle. Now, when you see that cruiser there turn the way he did, that was definitely an indicator to me that that cruiser had torpedoes out. And sure enough, those torpedoes came out. Now, Tat almost managed to torpedo beats around it. He needed to hold that angled course just a little bit longer, and he probably would have managed it just fine. Now, are these shots going to hit? Almost. They do connect, but they cause no damage. They knock something out. But come on, get those guns lined up there, looking for the shot. Doesn't need to hit him with much. Maybe 1 or 2 of these landing will finish this guy off. Those shots go over him. Not quite enough. You see how difficult it is to shoot at somebody who's running away from you. This is an advantage you can actually use if you're in a destroyer especially. Now, this cruiser though, he's not playing it very smart. At this point, this cruiser really just needs to open up the distance, which he's done, and stop firing and drop off detectability, because an Iron Duke is never going to catch him. He's that much quicker. More shots going out there. Really, at this point, this guy only needs to get splash damage from 1, and 1 is all it takes. So with that enemy cruiser down, the enemy team is now down to just 4 ships. They still have a destroyer, and Tat's team no longer does. But you can see Tat's team is now finally in a position to rally, and they're coming back and they're taking control of the caps. They have A, they have C, and they're in the process of regaining the B cap point. Tat at this point hasn't done a lot of damage, only about 13,000. He's managed 2 kills here, which has helped his team, but the position that he's put himself in this battleship is now not a very tenable one to support his team with. Specifically, he's all the way over here on the flank, on the southern end of the map, with islands in his way, and a tier 5 battleship without a spotter or a scout that he can put up and extend that gun range. And while he's at the very least faster than a US battleship, he's still in a slow battleship. So he's got to spend quite an inordinate amount of time basically just sailing in a straight line in one direction to try and get to the enemy team so he can shoot at them, so that he can be useful. In the meantime, the enemy team has managed to kill yet another ship, and they're now in the process of capping C yet again. Fortunately, though, for everybody on the team, the enemy destroyer finally gets taken out of play, so there are no more destroyers to worry about in the game. That means there are no more sneaky torpedo boats that can sneak up on you and torpedo you while you're sailing in a straight line trying to get to where the action is. Another problem with sailing all the way over here in a battleship, in a US battleship or a slow British battleship like this one, is that not only are you going to isolate your guns, but you're going to isolate yourself. Look at where the rest of his team is at this point. They've basically abandoned Tat here to just sail in this direction. He's got to sail around all these islands. There's no direct shot here. But if that destroyer was still in play, and given his position last reported by that enemy cruiser, if I was a destroyer captain, you can bet I'd probably be looking for this potential target. For the simplest reason that he's isolated, he's by himself, and he's got a lot of damage that I can just go ahead and farm. At this point, though, the battle is not lost, and the battle is also not won. You can see the enemy team still up on points there, holding just barely a points advantage. Again, that's going to go down to having those caps for so long, and why I say they're important early in the battle, so that you can, if you find yourself in this situation, weather the storm quite a bit better. Now, Tat has finally gotten himself into range of something he can shoot at, who is, by the way, very much so distracted by the rest of his team. So he's actually able to get shots out here without worrying about too much return fire. But of course, look at that, the enemy team has managed to kill yet another ship. So again, it's a very equal battle here. But his team manages to secure the B cap point. And that's going to be somewhat important here. There's still quite a bit of time left in this battle. And the reason that is important is because of the amount of time left, provided nobody else dies in the game, which is probably not going to be the case, that forces the enemy team to respond. If they want to ensure that they're going to maintain their points lead, they have to kill, but more importantly, they have to go back to that B cap point and they have to capture it. Now, Tat has managed to consistently put high explosive fire onto this Colorado, and you can see he set him on fire several times, and this Colorado has now repaired. If you're playing against a US battleship, something to remember, they've got that 24 second damage control. So all of your high explosive shots following that fire being extinguished or your torpedo hits, they're going to not set those fires. However, afterwards, they are going to set them. So if you're in a battleship, British battleship especially, you got that 30-second reload. Take 30 seconds between those shots. Make sure you've lined up your shots, but more importantly, give that time for that damage control to wear off before you set more fires. Tat manages to secure his third kill here as he starts pushing towards the B cap point. He's got a significant problem with a Nelson off in the distance there. That's a tier 7 British battleship, very dangerous, 16-inch guns, definitely not one that you want to deal with. Only problem is, he's got a friendly ship up there who's dealing with him, and that Nelson has got way more health. But wow, that Nelson went broadside and paid the price. Look at how much health he just lost there. But remember, this is a British battleship. Even losing all that health, he's still able to repair quite a bit of it. At this point, the enemy team now has 2 battleships. They have a Nelson and they have a Congo. Tat's team is down to, well, just Tat at this point. So he's got to decide what he's going to do here. He has 2 of the cap points. There's still a bit of time left in this battle, and given the points difference, it's entirely possible that their caps will make up that difference. But it's not something that you should really consider taking a risk on, especially given the fact that they have 2 battleships and you're in a battleship. So instead, what Tat's going to do, he's going to close in to the B cap point because he knows that the enemy team is going to have to go there to secure their victory. Again, it's not something that the enemy team wants to take a risk on either. So you know that's where the fight's going to be. Now, if I was in a destroyer, I would say don't engage, just basically run off, go cap C. But because that's not the case, if you're in a battleship and you have as much health as Tat does, definitely do engage. I see a lot of people, they'll basically do the cruiser or destroyer attack, they'll turn around, they'll run away, they'll drop off detectability, and they'll never fire their guns again. In this particular case, Tat is going to push up here, and he's going to deal with both of these battleships. He's got the Congo there. He's managed to set both the Nelson and now the Congo on fire, and he's resetting them effectively, but he's got to focus his attention here. Now he's going to do something that's actually very clever. You'll notice that he's still got high explosive loaded here. That Nelson's put the fire out, so he's going to try and get more high explosive out on him to set him on fire. Can he do it? Come on. No, doesn't manage to. But you'll notice here, well, he's got his guns turned towards the Nelson. He's keeping his rear guns faced the right direction to deal with the Congo. He's not letting his rear turrets traverse all the way back around. He's keeping them facing the direction he needs to. That's a very clever skill and very important when you're dealing with your aim. And the reason I say it's important is so that you can ensure that you have your shots. Now he switched over to the armor piercing here because, well, he's got a broadside Nelson at very, very minimal ranges. He managed to set that Nelson on fire. I think that might have been his secondaries there, and did manage a nice big citadel on that Nelson. But now he's got himself a problem. He's got a Nelson directly in front of him, and he's got a Congo to the side of him. And he's giving broadside to the Congo. But you know what? That Congo's kind of giving him broadside here. Well, not at the moment, but he's going to. Now, he still has the armor piercing loaded, and he manages to put a bunch of hurt into that Congo, manages to reset the cap, finishes off the Nelson with the fire from the secondaries, and you can see those secondaries blazing away. Now that Congo has got himself into a bad position. He's gotten into a turning fight with something that's a little bit faster in a turn. So the question is, who's going to get the kill? It is going to be tit for tat, but it doesn't look like he got it with his main battery, although it's entirely possible. Tit for tat, though, did earn a Kraken Unleash and did help secure victory by finishing off those 2 remaining battleships, so that's a wonderful victory for him. Overall, 88,000 damage done as a Tier 5 battleship in a Tier 7 game with a Kraken Unleashed. It's actually pretty damn good. A good number of secondary hits, too, closing in the range there. Good enough to be 4th on the team overall. Not top of the team, not something, you know, which is something we usually see, but 4th still overall, and of course the sole survivor on his team with 5 kills, carrying with the iron will of the Iron Duke. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me in the channel, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one, especially now following the new patch, you can send it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play various games live, more so after the New Year's, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.